there were about approximately 200, 300 volunteers emerging from the GPO into the laneways and streets in panic, because the GPO at this stage was ablaze. And they were under machine gun fire from Capel Street, and of course from Moore Street, and from the roof of the Rotunda building. So they were trapped effectively in the L of Henry Place, around onto Moore Street. And they had to build a barricade at Moore Lane because there was heavy machine gun fire from a British barricade just in front of the Rotunda, and from sniper fire from the roof of the Rotunda. So they built a barricade there and made their way across in batches of 20. And then they were trapped in the next section of lane. It was then the decision was taken to enter the terrace. And number 10 was the first building they broke into. And it was there they held their first council of war and spent the first evening there. And a decision was taken then to make their way up through the terrace to the comparative safety of the middle of the terrace. So the terrace of houses became the last headquarters of the GPO garrison. And number 16 became the headquarters for the leadership. And 6 of the leaders who were subsequently executed spent their final hours of freedom in number 16. 5 were signatories to the proclamation, along with Willie Pearce. So it was in the back room of number 16 that decision ultimately was taken to surrender. James Connolly, I suppose, more than any, was not in favour of continuing, because he was himself and Pearce were extremely concerned about the possibility of loss of civilian life. It said that Pearce had seen 3 elderly men being gunned down in Moore Street sometime before he ordered the ceasefire. I mean, James Connolly was lying on a bed wounded. There was a wounded British soldier in the room. There were 2 volunteers wounded. They say Clark was the most upset when the decision to surrender was taken, because he was effectively the leader of the, stretching back over history, had come through the Fenian movement, and was seen as the president, if you like, or who would have become the president of the Republic had they been successful. Then they all emerged out onto the street, and the British were amazed at how many of them were coming out of the houses. And Plunkett stood in the middle of the street, and he refused to turn around to acknowledge the British behind him. And he sent an emissary back. There was still sort of sniper fire happening. He sent an emissary back to the barricade to ask what would happen to the wounded prisoners. They'd been laid on the footpath outside Hannon's. And there's a great description of them standing in the middle of the street, refusing to turn around. And then they marched off with their arms still. McLaughlin insisted that they keep their arms rather than march off as prisoners. So they came back around through the same route, back around here down, and lay down their weapons at the Parnell Monument. And funnily enough, were rounded up in the Rotunda, which is where the volunteers were founded. It was amazing that it actually ended there, with the rounding up of the prisoners where they were founded so many years before.